Just a rem...
I'm coming back. Sorry, everybody. All right, are we ready to get started? Let's get going here. It's 7 o'clock. I'm slow. We've got lots of strange people in here. I'm not saying anything about that, so let's quiet down a little. Thank you, everybody, for coming. So the first thing I have to say, we've got two people who are leaving town very early in the morning. Where's your wife? So for everybody who does not know Rob Neff, KI0E, his wife Mandy, who's hiding back there. Oh, okay, got to give it a few more seconds till she gets out here. But they are moving to Georgia tomorrow morning. They will be very much missed in this area. They both helped start this club and have done so much with this club and are good friends to all of us. And we wish them the best in their adventures and can't wait to get Georgia in the log from those two. So you guys have safe travels. Thank you very much. Yeah, they're leaving at like 3 a.m., so they wanted to leave at the start of the chickens. Some of the chickens are going with them. Mr. Chicken isn't, but some of them are traveling first class in the car with Mandy. Not in the pickup with Rob, in the car with Mandy. What? Alive. 5 live chickens. Okay. Previous events. For everybody that I did not show this to, and I think I showed it to everybody and talked about this to everybody. Who all in here helped with the Lewis and Clark on the air? They sent us this beautiful certificate in thanking us for participating. As I remember correctly from looking at the logs, I wasn't able to get into it today to double check. We were in the top 50% as far as number of QSOs of all of the clubs that participated. When it came to Idaho, I think we were somewhere around 3 times more than the other Idaho clubs. So we were the one that gave Idaho the contact. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I'm going to assume that they're going to be nice and allow us to do this again next year. So put on your calendars, it's generally the first couple of weeks of June. We'd like to get as many people as possible operating on this and give out, tens of thousands of contacts for this event. For those of you who can't read it and don't know what it is, they put on a Lewis and Clark Trail on the Air event. If you contact one of the club stations in each of the states that the Lewis and Clark trip went through, you can get a nice certificate. If you contact, I don't remember, I'm thinking it was at least 3, you get another certificate, but the full one is for every state, and a lot of people chase it. It's real similar to the 13 Colonies event around the 4th of July and the Route 66 event. And it's a lot of fun to participate on. For those of you who are operating, how often did you get a decent little pile up chasing you? Right. And I think every year that it's done, the more active each state is, the more people will hear about it, the more people will chase it. It's fairly new. I'm thinking it's only like 3 years old. Is it? Yeah, it hasn't been very long. So it is very new. All right. Upcoming activities. The 14th, Deer Flat POTA activation, Caldwell side of the park, or of Deer Flat, at their park, off of Riverside. If you're on this side of the valley, jump the freeway to Karcher Road, take the Karcher Road, head towards Marsing, get off on Riverside. The road will go pretty straight for a while and then curve over to the dam. The entrance to the park is right at the curve. We'll provide, what did it say, hot dogs, hamburgers for lunch, and no?
We will have wraps and sandwiches, and those who are joining us to bring either dessert or side and drinks.
Lots of people have asked what bands we're going to operate on. A lot of that's going to depend upon how many people we have there and what band conditions are like. I will say we will be operating from the park probably from 40 meters up through 6 centimeters. Now, the other thing that's on here for the same date is the ARL's VHF contest. And I know we have some pretty active contesters in here. So everybody in the park will be able to use some of the radios that are there to give them contacts on all of the bands they're operating on.
Thanks, Jim. So we'll be about a mile south of War Eagle, and it's line of sight all the way to the west side of Deer Flat. So no obstructions. We'll be operating 6 meters all modes, 2 meters all modes, and then 220, 440, 900, and 1.2 with some big doggies, and we're going to have twins right at you. And we start at noon.
And we'll be operating at noon. Out there, it's hard to say. That's kind of in Central Oregon.
Hey, Cam, where we're going to be at is actually the grid squares Delta November 1, 2.
Okay.
Fly about 50 yards.
Ooh.
So if you're a grid chaser for your BUCC, if you want to claim DN12 for 2 meters and all the bands that we're going to be on, this is the time to get that grid, because it's a pretty rare grid to get because nobody lives there.
It up until about a month and a half ago, it was one of the, I think, top 6 most wanted grid squares on 6 meters for people searching for the Fred Fish Memorial Award. It's now dropped down because there was an activator there about a month ago, but it was in the top. We will start setting up at 10. The contest starts at noon. I hope to have all of our stuff on the air by like 10:30 or 11 before it gets too hot. And hopefully some of the fires are gone so we'll actually be able to see each other as we're operating. Right now, it's kind of hard to see across the table, but you don't know. Okay. So, Mr. Mike.
This is an RFI or an atmospheric thing going on. I wonder if anybody else is seeing it. But if you watch the screen there, you can see the chatter along the top, and it will peak out, and then it will go away. And in about 30 seconds or so, it'll repeat itself. And if you watch this for me, you can see the top line's getting more and more intense. And this is actually on 20 meters. Not 15, but this runs for about a minute. And what I was wondering, if any of you that are on HF and on 20 meters, you might listen around, or if you have a scope like this on your screen like this on your radio, see if you're seeing now. Now see, it's fading out now, and it's dropping down, and then that's what's normal, and that's what I see on all the other bands. And in a few minutes, this will start back up, and it'll all start building back up again and getting more and more intense. And then 30 seconds, it starts over again. There's no sound. It doesn't sound. You just see the signals. The signal goes up. It wipes out all of the small signals that are underneath that.
And I want to say you can see how wide it is on the band. And if you tune into it, you might hear something that's so broadband that it's going to wipe it out.
And you can only see the real strong signals up there on the right side of the screen. They're really breaking through it. And there's another ham in the area there, Steve Nippert in 7 DJX, lives a couple streets over from me. He's seeing the same thing.
I think that's Joe running 100 watts on FPV.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway, so this is on Facebook. This is posted up on Facebook. So if you want to look at it closer, you can and see what's going on with it. And so if you're seeing the same thing and you're in a different part of the valley, make a comment on the Facebook page and they'll let me know.
It was across the whole band. If you noticed, it went from 14.2 to 14.35 on band scope, and you were seeing it across the whole thing. And that's the best thing for anybody who wants to help. One of the best things to do when you're looking for stuff like this, if you see it, if you've got a way to do direction to figure out what direction is the strongest, maybe we can start triangulating and figure out where the noise is coming from. All right, now the fun part. How many of you have heard of the StandHope Ultra Challenge? I was hoping everybody in here, because we've talked about it so often trying to get help. Many of us in here help out with comms. Steve has been our technical person trying to put it all together. We'll get into it a little bit, but I just want to preface it a little. For those of you who don't know where StandHope Mountain is, which Scott probably knows exactly, it is a 100-mile ultra marathon that these crazy people who like to run in mountains run around all of these peaks. And there is no permanent infrastructure in there. There's very, very little communications at all that you can get right now from anywhere on the race course. Most of the race course is completely dead when it comes to comms, unless you've got a satellite phone or something like a Starlink.
Doesn't look like that austere of environment. I realized what I was doing right there in the middle after I get on everybody else about it. That bad of environment when you look at it like that. There's a little closer view. All the purple dots there are soda peaks. There is 17 peaks within the race course, and over half of those are 10-point peaks.
There's probably as many within a few miles outside of the race course. So it's not like it's all in the middle, it's all the way around there.
Correct. So you start thinking about how rough it is. I spent hours and hours studying the maps before we went up last year. I was flabbergasted, blown away by the terrain when I got up there. The maps do no justice for understanding it, unless you've got reference points to look at. Some pictures from our primary repeater site. This is sitting about 8,500 feet, if I remember right, elevation. 81? Okay. Looking south towards StandHope, which is 1,200 feet, Wildcat Canyon. This kind of overviews from this side, you can see about half of the race course, or you can see where about half of the race course would be if you could see it without a mountain in the way. Our secondary repeater site that we were trying to make work this year, Ohio Benchmark, did not recognize it at the time when we were up there, but it is a 6-point soda hill. From this point, you can look down and see the bottom half of the race course, pretty much all the way out to where John was stationed at, all the way up to the finish line can be circular viewed from here, pretty close to line of sight.
What's really neat at this site, there's a memorial for, I'm assuming it's a motorbike rider. I don't know if you put that picture up, but you don't need to. When we got there, they've got this little sign. Oh, this is the video that I took around the peak. There's the memorial.
From there, you're looking down the race course, back around towards the south. Well, that's actually towards the north, sorry.
Right, here's
now you'd be looking directly towards the city of Ketchum.
Pause it right. So, I didn't get it on this video. It's the first time I have been on a mountain and I looked down on the commercial aircraft flying around. Is it Haley that has the airport? Haley is off to that direction with their airport, and below this peak right here, about at the ridge for the other one, was like probably a 737 taking off and flying and went behind the peak of that mountain while we first got there. And to me, it was kind of amazing to be looking down at a Boeing aircraft flying. It wasn't on the ground, it was flying.
As Kim alluded to, there is no infrastructure in the area with the exception of the Bald Mountain repeater. It is very directional on its hearing. The lower end of the course, which I'll show a little bit here in a minute, most of those aid stations could get to it, but there's other portions of the course we could hear at S6 to S9, but not able to get into it. So that is from their club showing where the repeater pattern. Most of the course is due east of it, so east to northeast, so it really does not help a lot. It's been a good backup.
The race course is right up, kind of up around here.
Only the start finish and the first aid station about a mile in for the hundreds, or maybe it's closer to 5 miles in for the hundreds, have cell service. The rest of the course has absolutely no cell service to it. They run for 36 to 40 hours straight.
They have 42 hours to run. They can stop in aid stations, but if they stop and sleep all night, they'll never make it done in time. The record this year was, where's the boss lady? Like 26 hours of full-time running to get through. Okay.
So, yes, correct. So this year, the 100 started at 6 p.m. and ran through, and they have until 11 a.m. on Saturday, or was it noon on Saturday? Something like that.
I think it's noon.
Okay. I'm sorry, on Sunday to complete the race. And then, yeah, Sunday. And then the 30 and 60s start on Saturday and end by the end of the day Saturday. They run through the day.
And they're 30 and 60K, not 30 and 60 mile,
Correct.
Which makes them a lot shorter.
Some of the tools we've used to help get prepared for this: mapping and satellite imagery and propagation simulation. And a lot of this is probably very similar to when Scott's trying to scope out his next soda hike, looking at maps, looking where roads are and stuff. One of the things we learned this year when looking at the satellite imagery is the road is not always completely marked on your tools like Onyx or other non-vehicle motor use maps. This is the Ohio benchmark that we're talking about. You can see the road stops here on Onyx, but we were able to zoom in and see the two tracks and the fact that we can make it up further and actually make it to the top. Unfortunately, driving to the top, we can't activate it, but for our purposes, that wasn't the primary goal.
We had the radios out of the vehicle.
I think you have to crest on foot.
Is that what it is? I couldn't remember. The last 25 meters have to be on foot. And in, like, off of that peak, if you were going to the north to make that 25 vertical meters, you probably only had to walk 6 meters. The coming back would be the hard part.
Used quite a bit of RF simulation through Radio Mobile. For those who have used it, you'll know it's a older tool. The results we were getting seemed fairly accurate, and based on the inputs we were giving it, but the interfaces and usage of it, it's definitely a older tool that was developed in a prior age. One thing to note that really kind of surprised me and got me out of this was the Radio Mobile does not account for geology, where certain waves, if you got a rock face, the waves will bounce off them and stuff. It does not account for that. So we were actually, in a lot of cases, getting a lot better propagation than we anticipated. Non-line, we were getting UHF, non-line of sight, through canyons quite easily. That was blowing us away. Using handhelds, talking to the repeater 10 plus miles away, non-line of sight. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. In this case, the enemy's Murphy. If you go into, for those of you who don't know, last year I lost 4 tires on this event. That was last year.
Would you like to tell the story? Okay, well, he's going back there. We are out in the middle of nowhere on our second flat tire of the day. We've made it as far as we can. We are not in the directional receive section of the Mount Baldy repeater, so we could not talk to people in town very well.
They were on a summit.
We tried. We were just asking them to bring up an air pump to where we were right off the side of the main road, and it took us probably an hour to get that message through because the repeater would only listen to a few seconds where we started, and then it would desense, but we heard them full scale the entire time.
Try an hour and a half.
I don't know. So, yeah. We need help. Elaine, Larry, Hoot came up, rescued us. We know the tire's leaking. We filled it up all as full as we could to see if we could get back to town because we didn't have 3 spare tires on us. So we're hurrying down to town. We get to town because we got to worry about tires and the crew behind us.
So we were driving along. It was 11:30 at night. Take it, middle of nowhere, dark, no light, 1-lane road. And all of a sudden, we went over something, and Hoot looks at us, and he's like, that looks like an antenna. So I get on the radio, and I call these guys, hey, did you guys lose an antenna? Sure enough, they had lost an antenna and a tube and radials, which we never found the tube or the radials, but we did drive back and find the antenna. We searched for another hour for the tube and the radials and never find it. We finally got back about, 1:30 in the morning and finally caught up to these guys, and they had to go the next day and rebuild the antenna.
So the antenna, just so you know the reason for this, it's a tri-band antenna. It does 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and 6 meters. That's why these seem a little long for radials.
So part of operating in an austere environment is figuring out how to improvise. while the tires are being changed at Les Schwab, took a walk to the local hardware store, found a brass rod and some copper tube, and we had radials again. Not the straightest, but it works. We've made quite a few contacts on my makeshift radials. To preface that, based on the comment makes me want to volunteer, I had just bought the truck about 6 months prior, didn't realize how crappy a tires the prior owner had put on it. Made it to the whole event this year, about twice the mileage, not a problem at all.
Hey, to be honest, it is a fun event to help out on. I hate to say that. We've had issues. We are learning. This is only the second year we've ever done anything with this event. It's actually according to the event organizers, every year the comms has improved so much since we've taken over. It's like no comparison to what it was in the past. So that's a good thing.
So what was the plan? Emphasis on was. One primary repeater, 2 secondary repeaters at crossband units using 6 meters to link. So for the distances.
And some of you may ask why 6 meters? Radio mobile is why we chose 6 meters.
Correct. Each one of those colors there is the S6 or better for the repeater designated with the star, or the crossband designated with the star. There was no way we were going to get, without stepping up to 6 meters or 10 meters, coverage across the areas. That being said, I was just alluding to the comment we got 440 coverage that we didn't expect. If I go out to about here, we were able to hear the repeater.
Well, even at the actual repeater site, it was actually quite amazing. You couldn't get a good enough signal to actually communicate on, but I don't know how many miles that is and how many hills are between it, but every few minutes you would hear the repeater come through, and I could tell enough that, oh, that was Elaine's voice. I don't know what she said, but that was Elaine. That was Hoot. That was Brian. So we know this will work. We just...
Correct. And all of that was the issue, when we were hearing that and not being able to make reach to reach, was all based on using vertical antennas and an omnidirectional pattern on those planes. Primary repeater consisted of 2 of these boxes you see here, separated by about 1/4 of a mile. Unless you've got really good eyes, it's probably hard to see, but there is a little white stick sticking up out in the background there. That is our secondary repeater site. Due to the size of cans for a 6 meter and the ruggedness of the road to get up there, it's not feasible to run a co-located repeater. Last year we tried to take a 2 meter repeater up there with a set of cans. Thank heavens they survived, but it was deemed at that point in time that was not a wise decision to keep going forward with.
For people who don't know, the cans we talk about are the duplexers, and they literally are a can. You've got like most 2 meter repeater cans are somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 inches in diameter. And what they have is a rod that goes down inside with kind of a collar that brushes, and you adjust the height of that. Well, if that rod moves around while you're bouncing down the road and doesn't contact anymore, or moves even like a 32nd of an inch, your cans are no longer tuned. So it's really easy to knock them out of tune.
So this is kind of a simple diagram of what we were trying to accomplish, using 2 meter for local communication, 6 meter for the link, and 77 meters to link our 2 quote-unquote repeater setups. So this is kind of a close-up view of this box you see here. What we're running inside of it is a little Dell thin client that's running a Linux and an All-Star on it, a triplexer, and then on the back of each one of the radios is a little interface. Those are custom-built interfaces due to cost. If you've ever priced a rim light, they're about $50 a piece. You can, those ones that are on there are pretty much a DigiRig light with different a USB port and a serial port on them versus the ports that DigiRig puts on them, but the circuitries from their open source libraries they've put out there. RF side, you can see where it comes in here. One thing that I failed to account for was the 55 dB isolation in the triplexer, and that led to some issues, and I'll let you kind of explain what we think's going on there.
So, how many of you have ever worked on a fixed repeater site and duplex cans? What do you normally shoot for isolation in a duplexer? At least 60, preferably 80 or above. Well, one of the bad things about that particular setup, on our transmit side, we had 2 radios transmitting while one was receiving, and we only had about 50 dB between either one, so total isolation was not a lot. So what was happening is we would test this system out. We built it down in camp, tested it out with HTs, everything worked beautifully. Because off of the HTs we had, even at low power, really strong signals. When we set the system up, we were desensing the receiver between the 2 points, and of course we couldn't get the signal out because of the desense. As far as an experiment, this worked beautifully.
So our objective that we're going to try, once we get all the other bugs worked out, is going to put some additional bandpass filters in line before the triplexer, and hopefully we'll get transmit receive on all 3 channels back, and hopefully it didn't cost me a couple of radios.
And the other thing that we've talked about is the 70 centimeter link. There's a fair chance we're going to set it up off of separate antennas, so it's not going through the triplexer, so we don't have to worry about the triplexer isolation, and directional antennas, so less interference off of that. That's the next step if this doesn't solve all of the problems. It's the right, and what we'd want would actually be a real narrow bandpass filter, so we're knocking out everything else. A tuned one would be good, but it's just getting one small, lightweight, easy to pack around. We can get a bandpass filter since we're operating in different bands. I'm really hoping if we put a 2-meter bandpass filter, it'll isolate the 2-meter radio through the triplexer, because we're not trying to knock out another 2-meter frequency. Does that sound correct to you? Because you're better at this stuff than we are. Okay.
The other issue that went wrong, we talked about the not wanting to take the repeater cans up there. The knockoff rim lights, for lack of a better description, were just too fragile. You'll notice something's missing on this one. It's missing its USB cable. Kind of doesn't work very well with that. Out of the 7 or 8 I went up with, by the time I got everything working, I was down to about 3. That's partly because of my gorilla hands and me failing to realize how fragile a mini USB connection is. So, learning experience as I have been getting into building more and more electronics, looking at how to make them more rugged, etc.
And this is a device that, like, if you buy the Repeater Builder's rim light, there's thousands of them around. Probably many of you have used them, whether you know about it or not. In a fixed facility, I think they work great. These bounced around in a vehicle and set inside this case, which you can all come up and look. You know, it rode many miles in here with cables bouncing around, and it just didn't have enough. We're not going to talk about that. Be nice, Brian.
You will notice a lot of my learning and problems are self-induced. I will be 100% honest. So what the goal to fix that is for the next year, and this is my first prototype of it, is what I am putting them all on a single circuit board with a USB hub chip in it, and then I am just running cables out to each one so I can put it. And part of the other issues we ran into was we were also getting RF in on the USB cables. So this will be in an extruded aluminum case with a shielded USB cable and shielded Cat6 cables running out to adapters on the back of the radios also. Correct.
And this will have some shielding inside it by next year, we hope, which will help a lot as well. But again, HTs in camp, this worked beautifully.
So what did we end up doing? We ended up running two completely separate nets, one for the north half of the course, one for the south half of the course. Both run out of net control, but run out of two different trailers until other things happened. We were taking and bouncing down to the summit. It takes an hour and a half to communicate from there to there, by the way, to tell them to bring an air pump.
Yeah.
So a crossbander there, a crossbander down the canyon a little ways back to Bald Mountain. That covered the south end of the course and got us up and running for several hours. That kind of brought one of the points, I think lessons learned, of the KISS, or sometimes multiple short hops is better than trying to do one large hop. We did run out of power in the middle of the night, which we'll touch on that in the lessons learned here in a few minutes. But by the time we ran out of power, the Starlinks had been shuffled to the bottom end of the course, and our operators down there were relaying amongst each other off the Bald Mountain and relaying the information back through email.
Three-tenths of a volt. I will say Starlinks are great if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you want internet. They don't take gobs of power and they work well.
And they've saved our bacon the last 2 years.
Yeah, the Mini actually has a better plan. If you're not going to use over 50 gigs, you can get it for $50 a month. The regular Starlink is about 3 times that. But
other issues, like we said, we run into need to ensure our batteries are fully charged. I'll let Kim talk on that a little bit.
okay, so like our trailer and Brian's trailer, when we're out there, we usually don't have much of a power issue. We've got solar panels and lots of lithium batteries, which work great. But we take a portable battery that we're running on a site and bring it back to camp because it's now dead. How do we get it fully charged when we're back in camp? We plugged it into our solar systems and it charged up, but it would only charge up to the voltage that our solar system was at, like our battery bank. So if we're at 70%, you can guarantee that this isn't even close to 70% because of losses. Well, we've come up with a solution for that. And this stuff you guys can come look at a little later. This is a DC to DC boost converter. It takes from 9 to 30 to 36 volts on the input and outputs 14.5 volts. So I can take one of John's little, what were they, 6 amp hour batteries back there, hook it up to this battery even if it's not fully charged, and I can charge his battery until the BMS shuts it off and it's fully charged. This little thing cost me about $35. After I came up with that, I started thinking. Some of you have seen these. Earl got one not too long ago. It's another DC to DC up converter. I got my first one a few years ago to run a 19 volt battery off of a 12 volt, or a 19 volt laptop off of a 12 volt battery system. I played around with this one and adjusted it at no load off of this battery. Right now it says it's putting out 14.98 volts. When I had it hooked up to a battery that it was charging, it was putting out about 14.6 volts. So it'll fully charge a lithium battery from another one as long as the battery doesn't go dead. And this is, what was yours, $19 on Amazon? Something like that, less than 20 bucks for one of these. To get ready for next year, I got a little connector here with 4 plug-ins, so I can charge 4 batteries for 4 different crossband repeaters all at the same time. So hopefully we won't run out of battery at 2 o'clock in the morning.
If your trailer don't go dead in the process.
We don't talk about that. What? How much am I going to charge? Oh, at these events, not a penny, because I'm going to be so grateful you're out there helping us. If the wife and I do a lot of events. A few days ago, we were in Lewiston helping at the Lewiston jet boat races. We only lost 1 boat this year. I keep hoping they find it soon, but the Snake River is deep. But it's the first time we've ever lost a boat during the races. We help at events like this, so that's what we prepare for. But go ahead, Mr. Steve, sorry.
Other issues we ran into, testing. Once we were up on the mountain, it was hard to test because you're trying to listen on band A and talk on band B, and you start getting feedback, echo. So you kick, if you're driving, it's kind of hard to kick somebody out of the van with an HT to listen, and then when you're doing that, talking to net control, all we ever heard was, you're echoey again. Right, Brian? So testing is one of our challenges, also because of the location. It's a 5 to 6 hour drive to get to the get up there, so it's not something we can, it's easy to say, let's go actually test on site. We're typically showing up Wednesday about noon, and the race starts Friday at noon. We're between those 2 periods of time, and then well into Saturday, Kim and I are running like madmen with Brian's help this year, trying to get repeater sites set up, make sure everything's working, get equipment out to everybody, etc.
Yeah, to follow on that, what Steve said, to drive from the farthest point in one direction to the farthest point in the other direction, which I've never driven there because it's not a great road, but to where we went, you're talking, if you drive like Steve, about 3 hours. If you drive like a sane human, more like 4 hours. Now, if you're Mr. Klein, you make it in about 1 hour and 15 minutes, but you make that first drop off of Trail Creek Summit, you're at the bottom.
Does that mean it's about a 2 hour trip after talking with Ben?
Oh, yes. The whole site when it comes to trying to do something like this without infrastructure, I will say is a nightmare.
As Kim alluded to, yes, we've had our challenges. Our comms have gotten better year by year the last 2 years. And the positives we took away, we found a drive up 6 Point Soda Hill after the fact. That has half radio coverage to half of the hill. We were able to hear the 6-meter repeater using 2 verticals. Or actually, I'm sorry, we were able to be heard on the main repeater as it was just running as a crossband at that point in time on 2 verticals, but we were not able to hear them. So that gives us hope that if we go to a directional 6-meter at one or either end of the location by bumping our gain up from the, I think it's 1.8 or 2 that the vertical gives us to something a little higher, that we can establish that link.
If you remember on his map, that handyman aid station, that's it right there. That's how good the line of sight is from this site to the south end of the course. Okay, so yes. So, but let me answer it. Yes. Scott left. He would know better. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 of the tallest peaks in Idaho are right there. So there is no mountain that is enough higher than all of the others that the race goes around that you can see down in. Of those peaks, many of them are over 10,000 feet. Some of them are over 11,000 feet. So there's nothing. And StandHope is right in the center. But as you can see, like this line right here, every one of those, I would be willing to bet you, is over 9,000 feet. And there's Mount Bora is only 12,000 feet, and it's about 30 miles away. Well,
okay.
Yes.
Very good question, and yes, that's how we've ended up operating. But the challenge is you're talking a 36 to 40-hour operating window. John here can have all of his runners through and be done at, let's say, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. I think it was somewhere around there this year. Maybe it was a little later than that.
And to go off of yours, John here was actually talking on Simplex into StandHope over here without any real problem. Yeah, it was kind of amazing.
And I was able to hear him at this blue dot here, and so.
But it's the amount of people to go from aid station to aid station all on Simplex. You'd probably need 30 people because you can't go from one aid station necessarily to another. You may have to find spots in the middle. And to get enough manpower to run them for 42 hours. Yeah. Your site works good for that. Our big problem is the north side of the course.
Correct. Because to your question, as net control was strategically put where it was for distance drive from both directions. Net control could hear all 3 of these aid stations on.
This is the end of the road in both directions, basically. Yes. And that's what you got to remember is you can't drive from here to there without going through there.
But yes, net control was working simplex to these aid stations when we had issues with the repeater. Quality wasn't necessarily, depending on what frequency we were on, but that was strategically placed because that's our busiest aid stations.
And this setup, by the end, was basically just operating as a crossband repeater, and it showed us that the comms were working from this location to the majority of the aid stations on the north end very well. So as long as we can get a solid connection between the south and the north, it should work pretty good.
Lessons learned. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I am an engineer by trade, that's the saying that we like to over-engineer things is 100% true. And this has really made me step back and look at it, especially on the durability aspect and things, how to make it simple. One of the goals with these boxes, like I said, last year we started with a true DRX1 repeater with cans that we tried taking up there. One of the goals with these boxes was to be very agile for this event or other events, so we could go out and if we need to change frequencies, we can get in there, change frequencies, etc. Sometimes a couple of short hops is better than one large one. One is none, two is none, or two is one. Having spares and backups is key, because you have to be able to improvise like we did with the crossbanders there. Last year we had an antenna go bad, not the one that went out of the back of the truck, this was before then, that we didn't know about. If we would have had a spare with us, with the system we were trying to run last year, probably would have worked based on what we know now. And when an ultra runner says it's an easy hike, 1.5 mile hike, remember, he's an ultra runner. I'm an out of shape ham. I was huffing and puffing on my hike in there. Beautiful hike into one of the cutoff points that we needed comms at, but it was definitely, I wouldn't call it the extreme hike, and to most people it probably was a fairly easy hike, but it's very interesting up there how you can go from one side of the hill being high desert to beautiful lush green.
So a couple of other lessons that I like to bring up. Where we tried to set up our crossband repeaters, they were that close to working. We were just using fairly low gain tri-band omnidirectional antennas. I know if we get the primary repeater system working correctly and we use some higher gain antennas like some directional Yagis, it should solve that problem if we do directional on each end. So we know we're that close to getting good comms for the event. It's fun. Do we have a picture of a moose? Just to make my wife mad. So, I know. So, for those of you who have never been up in the Sun Valley area, a lot of it is, I'll say, ugly desert like around here, but there's also some beautiful mountain, forested terrain. While we were working stuff out, there was a nice 4-point buck in one spot that we saw. We're going out to one of the crossband repeater sites, a moose just sitting there, what was it, 50 yards away from us or less, maybe 25 yards. We pulled up and stopped. I took a bunch of pictures with my cell phone. We're like, we got to get going, but the moose isn't moving, so we finally take off and drive, and that's when the moose leaves. We saw probably 30 head of antelope, 217.25 rabbits. We won't talk about the .25 because part of it's still stuck to the pickup. Beautiful country. I will say I had a blast going to do it. It's very frustrating. John worked one of the more remote aid stations, drove in, camped out. It's a 4-wheel drive road to get into. Jerry brought his camper to one of the aid stations. Rod was there with Larry at one of them. Not necessarily a great road getting into, but completely drivable. Just not definitely a high-speed road, but it's some beautiful country if anybody wants to come help. Yeah, Ernest was there. His aid station actually has a vault toilet right at it. Beautiful people. No, the Aliens was at Rob Little's aid station, was the Star Wars station. Most of the aid stations are somewhat themed. One of them was Star Wars, so like when the first runner came through, they chased him out of camp with glowing lightsabers. Yours was the Hula station, wasn't it? No, they didn't do Hawaii. Last year they did Hawaiian-themed stuff there. before the, yeah. But it is, I think, a fun event. It's good to get out. It's long. You know, it takes a devotion of time and some resources, but it's fun, and you provide a lot of good community service at it. Anybody have anything that was there, have anything negative to say about the event itself and going out and helping? Yeah, well, she's never seen a moose in the wild, just like Hoot's never seen an elk in the wild around here.
What about the mama and 2 calves last year?
She wasn't with us, remember?
My second year doing it this time, and I had a blast. There were some frustrations. The repeaters weren't working. I didn't know what was going on because I couldn't talk to anybody in any way, but we figured it out, right? And that's what it was about, was use your resources. And hey, I made a simplex contact. Okay, now we got something going on, and we worked it out. We had a plan, and you know, had a good time. And I'm always amazed at the runners. And our aid station theme was "Don't Die," because we were 75 miles in. They were rough.
If anybody is interested in helping in an event like this, there's one that the comms is a lot less of an issue. There's one coming up in like 3 weeks up out of McCall called the I Am Tough 100. It's a 100-mile race. I know that one better, so I can actually describe the course. This course is much worse. The McCall course is 24,000 vertical feet in a 100-mile run. This course is higher. I don't know what it is. This course is almost 11,000 feet at the highest point. I Am Tough is only about 8,000 feet. Yeah. So a much simpler course. The nice thing about the McCall course, the where it runs, the Brundage Mountain Repeater, and I can't remember the name where the other one is farther east of there. Between those two, most of the aid stations can get in real easy. Almost half of them can get into one of those 2 repeaters on an HT just because of line of sight into those mountains. But it's still kind of neat to watch crazy people running 100 miles in the mountains. And, you know, most of you would think that they're all people like less than 25 years old that are out here doing this. This could have been one of the runners right here. Gray hair. The average, and the oldest age is 79 at I Am Tough. These people are hardcore. But if you guys want to see any of this stuff, come ask questions. Come on up. We're finished with our part. Thank you, everybody.